You're about to face the question that keeps millions in debt, anxious, and silently at war with their own reflection. What will they think if I don't have it? This isn't just a doubt, it's a command. A psychic virus that turns desire into duty and freedom into performance. Here's the truth. Most of your purchases aren't about need or joy, they're about belonging. But everyone has it. It's just an upgrade. I deserve it. Sounds harmless. But dig deeper. How many times have you bought something just so you wouldn't look like less? So you wouldn't feel left behind, outdated, invisible? What you call a choice is often just your response to the collective shame of falling out of the game. The fear of being perceived as less than is now the main driver of consumption, and the system knows it. That's why it sells unreachable standards and the illusion that you only exist when you match them. You don't buy a phone, you buy a statement. You don't pay for a trip, you pay to seem alive. You're not investing in yourself, you're performing a narrative. And it all comes in a silent loop. Anxiety, comparison, guilt, repetition. What should be pleasure becomes a symbolic prison. The question is no longer, do I want this? It becomes, can I afford not to have it? I've lived that cycle. Spent more than I had to look like someone I didn't even want to be. Got into debt to stay in a game that never invited me in. And in the end, I saw it. The real issue wasn't what I lacked. It was what I thought they'd think because I lacked it. That's the virus, and if you don't see it, you'll spend your life buying shields while bleeding inside. Most of what you buy isn't for you. It's for the invisible eyes watching. Your neighbor, your coworkers, the algorithm, your family, your ex, the world. We live in a symbolic showroom where if you're not displaying, you're disappearing. And disappearing in this system equals social death. That's why every purchase becomes armor, a way to say, I'm still here, I still matter, I still belong. But that armor has a cost. Because the more you buy to prove, the less you feel. The joy vanishes. The product loses value before it's even unboxed. The relief lasts seconds, the bill lasts months. And the pain isn't from the spending, it's from knowing you're staying visible in a game that's erasing you from the inside. The question, what will they think, becomes an internal mantra that quietly kills your freedom. And the cruelest part? The system rewards those who perform well, who wear the right brands, speak the right language, post the right images. But those rewards are traps, like crumbs tossed to a prisoner who smiles at the guard. The illusion of belonging is the most advanced cage, because you can look flawless on the outside and feel totally disconnected within. That's the system's hidden goal. The more you try to prove your value externally, the less you hear your internal voice. Want to test your freedom? Try saying no to what everyone says yes to. Don't buy the status item. Don't take on the symbolic debt. Don't follow the trend. Watch what comes up. The discomfort, the fear. That's the exact moment freedom begins. When you fear being judged but still choose to stay whole. Because freedom isn't having it all, it's being enough, even without it. You weren't trained to be free. You were trained to be desirable, acceptable, seen as successful. But the cost of that validation is invisible. You lose the right to choose without explanation. And when your freedom to choose dies, compulsive consumption is born. Suddenly, everything you buy isn't for you. It's to maintain a social role you never asked for. The system sells products, but what it delivers are identities. You think you're acquiring things, but you're actually inheriting characters. The provider, the powerful woman, the high-performance young adult, the woke minimalist. And each character has a price tag. To belong to the standard, you must constantly upgrade. And every upgrade is a new emotional debt. To the tribe, to the image, to your own ego. And the moment you try to break out, the attacks begin. Not with violence, but with glances. Social silence. The quiet judgment at dinner. The discreet unfollow. The punishment is subtle, but real. Because the system doesn't punish poverty. It punishes anyone who refuses the script of appearance. That's why so many people fake stability, while emotionally imploding. Because admitting you don't want to play the game anymore is seen as weakness. Here's the truth no one says out loud. Status is the new leash, and the more expensive it is, the harder it is to see. Real freedom isn't about being able to buy everything. It's about being able to not buy and still feel worthy. Here's your symbolic weapon. For the next 7 days, every time you feel the urge to buy for status, ask, who will feel satisfied, me or the character I created to be accepted? There's a debt that doesn't show up on your statement, but it collects every day. The symbolic debt of appearing right. The right home, the right timeline, the right body, the right words. And the moment you start living to match those expectations, your emotional autonomy begins to die. The cruelest part? You don't notice, because the system never says you're imprisoned. It says you're doing great. And that doing great becomes the cage. Now any step off script feels wrong. Any pause turns into shame. Any no becomes a threat. You begin avoiding the moves that could liberate you, just to preserve the illusion that you're in control. But control here is just another word for fear, dressed up as competence. You're not in control, you're calculating. And every calculation costs you spontaneity, honesty, and ease. This symbolic debt blocks you from changing direction, from saying this no longer fits, from admitting that what once made sense is now a prison, because society taught you that changing is instability, that simplifying is regression, that slowing down is failure. So even when you want to quit, you pretend to love the very life that's quietly killing your spirit. Your liberation begins with an invisible act. Allow yourself to seem wrong. In the next few days, do something your social persona would never do. Say no. Repeat an outfit. Admit you don't know. Show a flaw. That momentary collapse of image is where your real identity begins to rise. Because only those brave enough to disappoint others can stop betraying themselves. There's a silent terror that drives most lives. The fear of not being seen. Not out of vanity, Tonkin, but from the wound. That early wound of not being chosen, not acknowledged, not validated. The system knows this, so it offers you a deal. If you have this, they'll see you. If you buy that, they'll admire you. And just like that, your identity becomes a campaign. Your self-worth becomes a display. Your existence becomes a performance. That's why you go to places you don't want to be. Buy things you don't need. Say yes when your soul screams no, because the fear of disappearing feels stronger than the desire to stay true. And the system applauds, because the further you drift from who you are, the more dependent you become on who they want you to be. That dependency turns into profit, into engagement, into emotional and financial debt. And here's the paradox. The more you try to be seen, the more you lose sight of yourself. You forget your real tastes, your true priorities, your quiet joys. Everything gets filtered through the lens of, does this fit who I'm supposed to be? And that question, repeated silently every day, erodes your essence, until only a functional mask remains. Admired on the outside, lost on the inside. Here's your counter-strategy. Practice the invisible. For 1 week, do something you wouldn't show. Something that brings no clout, no likes, no captions. Something just for you. A walk without photos. A book you don't post. A kind act without witnesses. Because only in the invisible can you start to truly see yourself again. And when your identity no longer needs applause, the system loses control. Because no cage is weaker than the one that must be seen to exist. This is the moment to sever the invisible thread tying you to the idealized version of yourself. You don't have to own that. You don't have to become that. You don't have to keep that up. What you need, truly, is to exist without justifying your worth through things, images, or public validations. Because as long as your dignity is attached to perception, you're just a polished puppet trapped on an endless stage. The shame of not having is a social invention, a story held up by brands, algorithms, and family projections. You weren't born feeling less. You were trained to believe that whoever owns more deserves more. But now you know. It's not the lack that shames you, it's the gaze. And that gaze only loses power when you choose to show up fully, even when you look incomplete to outside standards. It wasn't desire, it was fear, disguised as taste. A purchase made not for joy, but for permission. The system trained you to perform sufficiency, to pay for peace, to buy your way into belonging, but you don't need to fit in to be free. The map of occult reprogramming isn't about saving money, it's about ending the performance, so you can finally belong to yourself, without the price tag. Your ritual starts now. In the next 3 days, identify one thing you feel ashamed not to have. It could be material, symbolic, or social. Write it down. Name it. Face it. Then ask yourself with brutal clarity, if I had nothing to prove, would I really need this? That question is a key. A break in the script. A door out of the trance. Comment below the symbolic thing you once thought you needed, and now realize was just emotional armor. Share this with someone tired of pretending. And if this message hit harder than expected, welcome to the trench. This war isn't against consumption. It's against the programming that says you only matter if you look like you do.